Howdy, nerdy romantics. This episode and the one that we will have next week, which will be part 2 of this episode, is about Ironheart. And it is a group discussion, but it's just me on here right now. And that's because I have a programming note before this episode gets started. I'm speaking from where I am at this point. So when we recorded the Ironheart review episode, my guest host and we recorded that at a time when a lot of stuff was going on at CBS and its parent company, Paramount Networks. And nothing was necessarily going on at ABC except for some weird undermarketing, in my opinion, of Marvel shows that had people of color and or women. Ironheart being one of those shows. And we talk about that in this episode. However, since we've recorded this episode, there have been a lot of other happenings in the news, specifically around Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Kimmel's remarks, executives fighting, and freedom of speech being curtailed. We don't discuss that in this particular episode. Obviously, I believe in freedom of speech. I'm on a podcast. It's my podcast, and I'm talking about what I want to talk about. Obviously, I also believe in representation for marginalized communities. I'm in at least 2 of them. I state this in this episode that I feel as if ABC, Disney, Hulu, and all of its other media conglomerates, most of their IP and most of their leanings have been, in my opinion, at least for this most recent decade, have been representing marginalized communities. So this is why we talk about different shows and movies that are now happen to be owned by Disney. Marvel Studios is now owned by Disney. Lucasfilms is also owned by Disney. These are superhero and sci-fi things that I find comfort in. And they just happen to be owned by Disney at this point. We are going to review the movies and shows that we've seen so far. And my guest hosts have their own opinions about whatever they've seen and whatever they choose not to see or whatever they choose not to review. That is their right. So I am speaking as Y.M. Nelson of Nerdy Romantics Podcast. And I talk about romance novels, romantic comedies, I talk sci-fi, and I talk about superheroes. And one of the superheroes that I talk about is Ironheart, which is next. Hello, Nerdy Romantics. This episode of Nerdy Romantics Podcast will be all about Ironheart, the Marvel TV show currently on Disney Plus. I will say this right now, spoiler alert. We are going to spoil everything about this show. We might even spoil some things about Wakanda Forever. Who knows? But we've already spoiled Wakanda Forever. You can go back and listen to those episodes. But definitely spoiler alert for this one. So if you have watched Ironheart, please stay tuned. Join the discussion. This is the Nerdy Romantics Podcast, and I'm your host, Y.M. Nelson. Okay, ladies, how are we today?
Pretty good.
Awesome. So today I have Marcie and Staci with me to talk about Ironheart. And what we're going to start off talking about is how we found out about this show. Because, y'all, there's actually some controversy a little bit about the amount of advertising that was done for this show. So, Marcie, I'm going to start with you. How did you find out about this show?
I probably found out because I'm a Disney Plus subscriber. And so I think it came out in one of those little newsletter things I get in email. And then I think the other part must have been like word of mouth, us talking about it, because you're right. I didn't see a lot in a lot of other places.
Yeah. Stacy, how about you? How did you find out about this one?
I think it was mentioned some time ago about it might be something. I think we mentioned like a year or so ago that we mentioned it, that we saw something about it.
Hmm.
But like this year, like we was really when Marcy mentioned about, I think on one of our text chains or whatever, I think she may have mentioned about Ironheart and asking you about it. Other than that, I hadn't thought about it because I didn't really see. I mean, I don't have Disney Plus newsletter or anything like that, so it was really going to be if I saw it on online somewhere at
Right.
this point. And I did not really see anything. Now it's too talking about because your phones be listening to you, and then it'd be like, oh, there it is. There
Right.
is an Ironheart
True.
thing. But other than that, I really no. I mean, I think we may have even mentioned it when we saw Wakanda when we did. I think we did something about, oh, we talked about Wakanda Forever, and I think we
Yes.
Hmm.
mentioned that and that kind of thing. But the whole series about there's going to be a show and everything, I probably found out, was it a month before it was supposed to come out, or even
Hmm.
a few weeks, something like that. It wasn't something I expected because I didn't really think about it or see anything about it, any really
Hmm.
major advertising about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And so that's the controversy is that there was no real advertising about this show. And the fact that this show has a black female main character is a real kind of a slap in the face in this current climate of ours, that this had no it had almost no kind of advertisement or anything kind of running up to when it aired. Also, this is one of the few shows on Disney Plus that was not showed week to week. I don't know if y'all realize that. I didn't realize that until somebody pointed it out. Usually, with the other shows, especially like with the big ones that we kind of remember, like the WandaVision and Loki, they were
Yeah, they
showed week to week.
yeah, they show typically what show the first two episodes, and then after that it's week to week.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Just
Exactly.
realized that they just put it out almost like Netflix used to do.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
But I don't necessarily. I didn't feel like that played into the racial part as much because two, it only had 6 episodes and it was dragging it out for longer than it needed to be. And also, to Stacey's point, the model of how anything is released has changed drastically over the last year or so. So it didn't seem as odd to me. We've seen Stranger Things, and like now that that's the model, a
yeah.
few here
Wednesday.
make you wait. Wednesday, like a few here, then we make you wait, then we give you the rest. That part didn't necessarily trigger anything weird for me. Also, to be quite honest, I feel like that's a Disney. I feel like the marketing in general is part of this new Disney mindset, because if you think about Agatha all along, unless you were a Disney subscriber or you had watched the first one, they didn't do any real marketing for that one either until after it was out, honestly. And so I feel like once it got traction, they were like, "Oh, we should capitalize." But I don't think they're pushing the Marvel content in the same way that they used to. And especially, to be fair, I don't think they've ever equitably pushed Disney's Marvel content that is female lead driven. Captain Marvel didn't get what it deserved either, and so I do think that's a failing of the Disney marketing model, is that they put a lot of manpower and money behind the male driven movies and content, but they do not do the same for female driven. And I don't even know. I mean, I think that it was a double whammy in this case because it was both female driven and largely people of color. But in general, the minute it had a female lead, I think its destiny was written.
Yeah, I agree. As far as female driven, they dogged it. They dogged female led Marvel shows and movies.
Mhm.
I think they do it as well for racial. Anything that
Mhm.
is a person of color, kind of. Um,
Yeah, what was the one about the moon?
Moon Knight.
Moon Knight. That
Oh
didn't
my
get pushed
gosh,
very much
it
either.
didn't get pushed at all, and that was amazing.
Male.
Right.
And that was
Right.
male too.
Amazing. And it was
Right.
Um,
But it was.
male,
But it was.
but it was
But it was
yeah.
people of
yeah, it
color.
was people of
Yeah.
color. So that's the thing. And
Mhm.
actually, what I've noticed is everything, pretty much pandemic and afterwards, which is in the multiverse saga, it has been
Mhm.
in the multiverse saga. It's pretty much been a diversity, a lot of diversity there,
Mhm.
and a lot of not getting pushed.
Mhm.
Which and this is in phases 4 and phases 5, and I agree. I think it's a failing of Disney, but we also know in this climate, it's a failing of Disney big time, and in the
Mhm.
relief of in the comparison of what else is going on in this climate, they're one of the ones that capitulate. Which to me, it seems like it seems like because of their programming, because Disney is Disney Plus, is Hulu, it's ABC, it's Marvel, it's Lucasfilms, which is Star Wars. A lot of this programming is diverse representation
Mhm.
and is garnering that audience, right? So you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot when you don't when you really downplay things. On the other side of this, there's also controversy about CBS, but CBS is in the middle of a merger and trying to kowtow. That is also why I am announcing here, which all my newsletter subscribers, you already know this. So if you're not a newsletter subscriber, you probably need to be one. But I will not be reviewing Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Star Trek Academy is also coming out, and as much as I would love to talk about Admiral Kim, that has already been released, y'all, Admiral Harry Kim, as much as I would love to talk about that, I am no longer a Paramount Plus subscriber and have not been for a couple of months now, ever since resignation of Bill Owens from 60 Minutes. So, yeah, we won't be doing that here. I almost felt kind of, should I do the same thing in the Marvel sense? But here, I really feel like they have the programming out there. They're just not doing anything to promote the programming. And I feel like part of what I want to do, at least, is promote the programming. The other part about this that goes into the how I found it kind of thing is not that just there were posts on threads talking about this is not getting any love, so we're going to let you know that Ironheart is coming out, but there was also review bombing on Rotten Tomatoes. So this was review bombed
Mhm.
before it even came out by incels
Mhm.
on Rotten Tomatoes. And I almost feel like because people were trying to grassroots promote it on social media, the social media incels then came and bombed it on Rotten Tomatoes. I feel like that's what happened. Now, that's just the way I'm seeing it.
I don't know because
Yeah.
I feel like the timing of those reviews was before I saw people
It was,
trying to
but
come back in and support it.
yeah,
But
it was
because
before it
I think it
even
was because
came
the
out.
media,
Yeah.
I think it was because the media had actually been favorable to it. And I think it wasn't social media. It was that initially the first few reviews of it from NPR, from other things had been largely favorable. And I think
Yeah.
that's what triggered a lot of the negative posts was not, and I think it was social media that kind of boomeranged around and tried to say, hey, wait, this isn't legit. The show isn't even out yet, or I just watched the first two episodes and they were great. Like I think social media was a response, but I think the initial period was actually after the first critical reviews, when the critics got the previews and got to see it and said it was good. That's when we started to hear and see bad reviews, or people talking about a black, what the framing was, and all of that. I think
Mhm.
that part came after that, but I don't think I saw social media really respond until after the review started to look really odd for a show that hadn't actually been released yet. Like, I was like, how do you even know yet?
Yeah, they didn't.
Like, how everybody didn't get a preview. Like, how do
Right.
you like why how
They
do you, what do
didn't.
you, how can you make a review about something that's not out yet, because it's clear that you're not in the critics group. So I think that to me was the trigger, and then I think after that social media responded and said we're not going to let this happen. But I think a lot of it was people heard those initial reviews and were like, we don't want it to succeed, so let's go ahead and tell people now that it's terrible. But how do you know?
Right.
You can't possibly have seen it yet. What?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. Just
it was
randomness.
frustrating
Yes, it
to see
was.
that, but it's not surprising. We often, I think, a lot of times we see that, especially across superhero driven or what were previously predominantly non-minority spaces. I think I'm used to seeing that reaction when someone is different than how they envisioned it in their heads. When someone isn't. I mean, we can look at Cynthia Erivo and Josh Gad and Jesus Christ Superstar and being an atypical role for one of those, atypical person for one of those roles, and all the backlash from that. I think it's just this day and age invites people who feel like they can be anonymous to be loud and to spam in a lot of places. And I think it's just the noise that we're going to have to deal with, because people have a lot of bravado when, unlike us, they have to put their faces and their names behind their opinions.
Right.
It's easy to bash people when you don't, when you're not going to be held accountable because your screen name is 00123997. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It's real easy
Exactly.
to do that. But if you're held accountable to being who you say you are and then putting that behind your opinions, it gets a little harder to do.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Stacy, you have anything to add?
Not really, because I didn't watch any of that. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that they talked about it and all that, but when y'all said to watch it, and it's like in 2 weeks, and I did. I didn't really pay attention to what people were going to say about it, and probably because I already knew what they were going to say about it. How how they handled Miss Marvel, how they
Mhm.
handled those other shows.
Mhm.
I did, and like I said, the climate. I knew that as soon as black female lead, it was going to have there's going to be people who are going to say something.
Mhm.
So I just didn't go into looking into it. I was just going to like when I watch it, I'm going to be judging it from that, and
True.
there it goes. I'm not,
Yeah.
and I mean I understand they.
Mhm.
I mean as soon as they said they weren't doing a lot of advertisements for it. I was like, yeah, I know why. Because they're not going to be doing, they're not trying to put anything to the forefront that isn't basically white male centric heroes. They're really not. They're not doing that right now in this climate. They are not really going to be doing that. And
Yeah.
I think what they realized they put so much money behind it. Well, we got to put it out, and they did, and it was a good product. But I do think that a
Mhm.
lot of it was anything that would have come out and it wasn't white male centric. It was going to get get something, get negative reviews from a certain subset of people. And like what
Mhm.
Marcia said about when casting and all that for like roles that were not really Ironheart. I mean, when people said, "Oh, Ironheart, this or that," there was already a comic. It wasn't like they put
Yes,
her
it's
in there.
already a
There's a
comic.
comic,
Yeah.
and
Right. It
she's
was
black in
canon.
a comic. It's
Right.
comic. I
Yes.
mean, it wasn't like they even did different casting. That's how it was.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. So when
It's
people complain about it, it's like it's another comic and it's based on the comic.
yeah.
Right.
So I just
Yeah. And
and maybe it was happening because of the time frame, and I just wasn't trying to trying
Mm-hmm.
to just watch any of that or whatever. I
yeah.
don't know what was going because
Yeah.
I mean I heard about it, but I didn't go into detail because I was like I'm just watching it,
Yeah.
and so for me, I didn't really try to concentrate on it. I mean by the point I saw it or heard about it, everything was done. It's like if they hadn't done any advertising at this point, I mean it's coming out next week. I only know about 2 weeks. I mean,
Right.
like
Yeah.
Yeah.
just show me, just let me see how it goes. And that
Yeah.
is where I'm kind of coming. That's why I haven't said a lot because I wasn't paying any attention to that. I was just like, when we're gonna see it? When is this? When we're doing this? Let me see it because I have not.
Right.
I'll be honest. For most Marvels, I've I'm marveled out. I'm not really like when they first were coming out. It's like, oh, let me see the next Marvel. Now it's like, okay, if it's out, how easy for me to go and see it because I've not. It
Hmm.
has not been like, oh, I want to see a Marvel picture or a Marvel TV show. I have not had a really drive to watch them like, back in the day when, back in when it was the heyday. I like it's that long ago, but what I'm saying, since
Yeah.
the
Before the
snap,
pandemic was a
you know,
long time ago.
it's like after the snap,
Yesteryear.
I haven't been paying as much attention, and I
After the snap.
after the snap, like that's it.
Right.
I haven't been, and like when they were doing Disney Plus and they started doing the TV shows, it's like WandaVision, great. After
Hmm.
that, it was just was to me a decline, and I didn't care as much for them. Now some of them, have gone up like, oh, I like this one or I like that one,
Hmm.
but for the most part, it was like, well, if you go by what I like, it'd be like WandaVision,
Hmm.
and then Agatha All Along, and then like Ironheart. And now that might be Agatha, Ironheart, and WandaVision. But I mean, those right now were my top three of the shows. Loki was good, but first season, but second season, I was like, nah, I, none of them except for Wanda and Agatha, and then well, and Ironheart came out all at one time. That I was anticipating the next episode.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, I watch it, but I wasn't like, oh my gosh, when's the next episode? I was like, I'll watch it. It's on. It's okay.
Yeah. And to be fair, I don't watch trailers in because I don't want to. Sometimes I feel like the trailer's the best part of the movie, and then sometimes I feel like nothing in the trailer was in the movie, and neither way really lands well with me. So I stopped watching trailers probably about 2 years ago, and so most of my perspective is retrospective, of course, because I didn't go digging. I didn't look at any trailers. I didn't look at anything until after I had started watching. But then I went back and did my research about all the controversy. But yeah, I try not to view any trailers. It works to my benefit most of the time. But there have been times where I did not realize what movie I was going to see till I was in it. It's 50-50 shot. Sinners threw me off a little bit. But it's because I didn't know anything about it. I just went in happy go lucky and then halfway through was confused. But by and large, I didn't watch any of the trailers and I didn't watch any of the YouTube videos or any of that until after I had started watching the series. And I was filling time waiting for the second three to come out
Yeah.
and then I looked to see what everybody was saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So, with this one, since Stacy's already said it, Ironheart is one thing actually, Stacy, before we leave this topic. I think that a lot of the audience that came into Marvel Comics via Marvel Cinematic Universe is feeling the same way that you're feeling. So the part of the audience that's into the comics, they're waiting for the next comic thing, right? They're there. They're already fans. So those of us who don't read the comics, we
Hmm.
kind of go into a couple of patterns here, right? A couple of us are going into the pattern of, okay, what do you got for me and how does this connect with this thing, right? That's me. And then a lot more of the audience that are in it just because of the MCU and just because, We saw Robert Downey Jr. play Tony Stark, and we got hooked from that moment forward. A lot of us are like, okay, who are the rest of these people? Why do we need to, watch this about them? Why? I mean, this is too many characters in my head. This is a lot going on. And you really have to compel that part of the audience with the story of things and with really good character portrayals. Like, I really want to see this again. Like, WandaVision had a really good story going on, and you were like, where are they going with this kind of thing? I will say with Moon Knight, I loved Moon Knight, but I will add that I liked Moon Knight because I wanted to know where they were going with that story. That dude was, he has mental disorders. So, I really wanted to know what was the next thing. There was a mystery kind of there that pulled me in. And
never saw it.
Oh, yeah,
it was good. It was
good.
actually good. And I have to admit,
Yeah.
when you added that, when you said that, I was like, okay, that's one of the ones I did enjoy. But
yeah,
again, and that's Marvel, but that's not Marvel. And I guess maybe
Right.
part of the thing is that most of us, when we got into Marvel, was from the movies, but they were not. A lot of them weren't like Marvel's A-list. They're going into less of the main characters that, if you liked comics, or even you didn't like comics, you just knew about the comics a little bit. Okay, I knew. Oh, Captain America, heard of him.
Yeah.
Iron
Right.
Man. I mean, some of those things I've heard of. Because I remember my cousin had the old Iron Man figurine, so it was like the new one, like the old looking Iron Man kind of. So I
Yep.
recognized what those were,
Right.
even though I never really read the comics, but I knew Thor. I mean, I knew that.
Right.
But then once they started doing this other stuff, it's like, who are these
Yes.
people? So for someone who doesn't read the comics, it has to really have a good story, because I don't have a history of that,
Exactly.
of those characters.
Exactly.
So,
And I
Yeah.
think that is where a lot of the audience who started watching these things because of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, not because they were comic book fans. I think that's where a lot of people are now that we're in the multiverse, because most of these characters are characters that we have never seen before. They haven't been on live action things, they haven't even really been in animation kind of things. These are characters that we've never really seen before. People know the Incredible Hulk. People know, like you said, Iron Man, Thor, and so we were there for that. And two, there was like a connectedness, like, okay, I gotta see what happens next here. I gotta see what happens next here. But right now, here, where we have this connectedness, it's like it's a little bit of who are these people and why are we connected?
And I think
Kind of
at
thing.
least this one was easier
Yes.
because it was in Wakanda Forever, because I did have a pretty current context of who she was. And so I think that was helpful in having me watch this one and be like, oh, I know who this is.
Right.
And so I think that was different about this one. Like Moon Knight, no clue where that would be connected.
Right.
But Ironheart, I did understand because I had just seen her in Wakanda Forever.
Yeah. And then two, she's also a legacy character of Iron Man. So in the comics,
I don't know comics though, so canon
in
didn't
the
mean
comics,
anything to me.
yeah, in the comics, I'm going to educate y'all,
Thank you.
because Perry is not here. Shout out to Perry, superhero cinephiles. He is traveling. So in the comics, she is actually working with, in her comics, she's actually working with Tony Stark. Tony Stark is imbuing this knowledge and everything like that onto her because he sees she's a genius, all this kind of stuff. They're working together, so it's a legacy in that regard. Of course, here in the MCU, Tony Stark is no longer with us. And so the way that we see her get that legacy is because she has the fellowship, right? at MIT. She's
Mhm.
got the Tony Stark Fellowship kind of thing. But um, to your point, Marcie, we've seen her in Wakanda Forever, so we know directly what's going to happen because we've already kind of seen a little bit of her origin story happen there
Mhm.
from the MCU point of view. And two, because she's got this namesake of Iron something, we kind of have a little bit of, well, we know a little bit kind of what she's going to do. She's going to have a suit and she's gonna be real strong in that suit. We know a little something, right? We know a
Mhm.
little something. But what I really liked here, and we're getting into kind of the character portrayals, is, and that I like about this whole series, is the fact that it goes even a step further than, you know, the technological, the, I mean, she's already a genius, right? But then we get a magic element involved in it. And so I love where this is going. So that kind of brings in the whole, oh, where does she kind of fit in? Or where do some of the other characters kind of fit in magic wise? So then that brings in the whole Doctor Strange, that brings in the whole, I think our surprise guest was mentioned in Agatha all along,
Mhm.
short mention in Agatha all along. And so we're just kind of trying to figure out, you know, where all of this comes from. So it's like we got black girl genius and then we got black girl magic, literally. And I'm just kind of here for all of it, y'all. So let's get into this whole character portrayal. What did we think about Riri Williams, about her family, the characters that stood out? What did we think about that? Stacy, any things that stood out for you character wise?
Well, I liked her character. She wasn't, well, I was gonna say she wasn't running real, but she was in a way running real. She was all the characters that we've seen, like it's Tony Stark, but in a black form. And I think, 'cause, okay, I didn't watch a lot of stuff beforehand about negative reviews or negative things like that. But once after I watch it, the algorithm changes. It's gonna show you stuff.
Exactly.
And one of the things someone brought up, and it wasn't they were talking negative, they were mentioning kind of like what I thought was that the qualities we see in her, the same qualities we saw in like Tony and other characters, but in her it was
Exactly.
dealt as a negative. I was like,
Yep.
you're kind of right about that because she knew her stuff, but she's considered arrogant. She,
Mm-hmm.
some of the stuff that she knew and could do. And well, let me change that. I didn't consider her arrogant. Those people who talked about her character talked about that and said that she was arrogant for it. It's like the same thing. She knew her stuff. What's the wrong with knowing your stuff and advocating for yourself and all that? But
Yeah.
her character was that she was strong but soft. Uh, and not soft, but I mean, she wasn't invincible,
Right.
which I like. I mean, we had the strong black woman. I mean, we're going to talk about themes and stuff, but it showed that what the world was doing to her, what did affect her on a deep level. And I do like the fact that they actually kind of mentioned what happens when people that are close to you die and how that affects you. You don't A lot of times we don't really see that,
Mm-hmm.
or if that's the whole thing of the show. It's like how to cope. But you actually see that she's living her life, but at the same time, those deaths in her family with her, with I guess spoilers, with her best friend and her stepdad. And I really don't call him stepdad because he was like really her dad, but I mean her father, and how that affected everyone around them, and how they coped with it and coped with that loss. And then later on when we see Natalie, which I guess I might be talking out of my turn there too, and how
That's okay.
each one of those main characters, have the main characters, how she responds to Natalie, how her mother responds to Natalie, and how Natalie's brother responded to Natalie, and how all three of those people responded to her in three different ways, and how they, and it's, I thought her character really had depth. It really wasn't strong black girl magic, and you don't go any deeper than that. I think she really had depth and meaning, and that we saw her struggle, and I think she actually kind of hit the nail on the head. I can be as smart as Tony Stark, but I still don't have that Tony Stark money to do the things I want to do, which I think kind of hits home for a lot of us. We might, we say pull up by your bootstraps, and it's like, well, it is kind of hard to do that when you don't have the funds to buy boots. So it does can make a difference. Yeah, she was as smart as she can be, but that still did not mean it had money in her pocket from doing that.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I'm sorry, I may have just I'm
No,
tired
it's
too.
it's totally fine. Stacey, totally
Oh,
fine. What you're saying, totally fine. Makes sense. And actually, yes. I mean, a lot of this resonates. And for people who were saying the negative stuff in the beginning, didn't even watch or listen to her commentary in the first episode because she said all this stuff in the first episode. She's saying that in the very beginning. Marcy, what did you think about Riri, her family? What any character portrayals that stand out to you?
Well, I feel bad because Stacey has
She said it
really
all.
swung for the hills and
She
painted
did.
this really great picture. But I was anti Riri,
Oh
pro Natalie,
wow.
pro her mama,
Oh
and pro
gosh.
most other people in the show. But I felt like in a season of poor choices, she made everyone, and I didn't see as much personal accountability as I have wanted to. And I understand why Ezekiel was mad at her because every time she had a chance to do right, she did something else instead. And so I get that people respond to grief differently, and I like that they showed the humanity. And don't get me wrong, I like the show, but as a character, she was not my favorite. Natalie was. I struggled with a lot of her choices. I struggled with a lot of her the fact that her choices often put other people in danger, and that it wasn't just once. It was darn near everybody up to and including the last scene. So I feel like that for me was something I struggled with as I watched the show was that. Now, did that add some depth and some drama? Absolutely. Was there the concept of superhero, anti-hero, that whole thing, and who gets to be a hero? Yes, but also people didn't like Tony Stark either. There's a reason. And I think
Exactly, y'all.
the same traits that people didn't like about Tony Stark are the ones I did not like about Riri either. I loved her mother, loved Natalie. Feel like the brother could have given a little bit more grace, but he did show up quite often. Loved Zeke, thought that was great. And I was really inspired by Anthony Ramos' portrayal of Parker slash the Hood, and the depth that he showed in his character, in that push pull between when he was the Hood and
Hmm.
in the moments where you got to see who Parker was before and was evolving to become. Cousin Joe, I enjoyed Cousin Joe. I thought he was great too. So yeah, I think for me, I often was frustrated by Ree, especially because in a lot of cases she was being offered wisdom and support she just refused to take, and that made it a bit frustrating for me because at every turn there was a person standing there saying, I'm trying to be here with you, help,
Hmm.
let me help you, and she was like, I got to do this on my own, said no one, and got to the end and was like, I couldn't have done this by myself. Exactly, had we learned that in episode 2, cousin Joe might not have been incinerated, but
and that might be why I like her, because I'm like, yeah, I can do this on my own.
I was like, come on now. And you know what? And if that is proving to be true, Stacy, that's one thing. But at every turn it was proven not to be true in such a way that assistance should have been taken. That's my point. It's one thing if you say I can do this on my own and you look like you've been through it at the end, but you really did do it. She didn't really did do it. And
Hmm.
every time she got to the point of failure and had to bring somebody in, she done jacked up their life. But it's fine. Everybody's fine.
Mm.
It's fine.
So
Okay, like we said, Natalie. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead,
Well, I was gonna say
Stacey.
Natalie. Like you like Natalie is like, and I found Natalie frightening to be honest. Just
Really?
well, what
Please
I mean by
explain.
frightening, It's because she's supposed to be probably because of AI, and I've been,
Yeah.
stuff about AI and
Mhm.
stuff has been giving me like, oh goodness, if AI gets to the point where they're doing that, and then don't have to listen to what you say, we better be start making friends with AI because obviously we're going to be in trouble. And what I mean by frightening, I liked her character, as in the
Yeah.
actress that played her and that kind of thing, and the idea of a friend like that kind of a thing.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it wasn't a it's not supposed to be a person. And I'm just thinking about how our AI is starting to act and starting to grow and starting to learn.
Hmm.
And if we actually got to the point where AI could, well, not it's not even probably will be at some point where we'll be smart in this. We'll be able to do stuff. And it just makes me, it's not really, it's more like me thinking of the future of what AI can eventually be. And I don't, and we do a rosy picture of it in that kind of thing. But, I'm thinking more of the lines of it's going to kill us just
Hmm.
to get, is that kind of thing. I mean, and so when I say frightened by it, it's not her character or anything like that. I'm just saying Natalie. And then Jarvis and how that became Ultron. I mean, that
Yes.
kind of stuff and that kind of
Right.
direction of all that stuff was going.
Hmm.
Just kind of it's like, oh, that could be later on down the line. Don't let her get a glitch and it's
Right.
scare, that
The
kind of thing.
AI component of
Oh,
Natalie,
yeah,
not the
exactly. Yeah,
Natalie person,
not the Natalie
not the
person. Because I mean,
person.
I would.
So
Mhm.
Yeah.
so I don't I mean even that didn't bother me as much because I knew that it came from directly from her consciousness and from her
But you said she made mistakes and all. You know what I'm
grappling
saying?
with. But also she was created by parts of Riri's genius that she just didn't realize she possessed at the moment. So
Hmm.
I didn't that didn't bother me as much because Riri created her. I think that was the difference. And also even then she had more emotional intelligence than Riri did. So again, I don't it didn't bother me at all because one of them needed to be the voice of reason because clearly by herself she didn't have one. So I was willing to deal with Natalie partially not being real because one of them had to be the voice of reason and one of them had to say, look, little girl, this is a bad idea. And even then, when your conscience in your face tells you this is a bad plan and you still don't listen, it was a lot. It was a lot for me. It was a lot for me because I don't, I mean, here's your sign was walking beside her and she still wouldn't answer. I mean, I don't know how many more times Natalie said, I don't think this is a good idea. I
Hmm.
don't think it's going to do what you think it's going to do. Don't you think you should ask someone, tell someone, do something, raise a red flag, send a smoke signal? It really, yep, it didn't bother me at all because at least this version of AI was trying to keep the human on the right path. Sure, that could have evolved into something else later, but it didn't. And so I'm okay with it.
What both of y'all have said is making me think now, what, because Natalie is basically a download of Riri's brain. Remember, she had her
Exactly.
brain in.
That's what I'm
So,
saying.
what if she had downloaded her conscience,
Oh, okay.
and
Well,
so she didn't have her conscience. Instead, her conscience is outside, and instead of recognizing this as, hey, this is my, you know, what part of it? Your ego part, the part that kind of reels you in, reins
mhm,
you in,
mhm,
instead of her realizing, hey, this is my common sense part,
mhm.
you know, of my brain, she's looking at it, like Stacey's saying, as AI and a product
Yeah.
of her genius, and she's still
Hmm.
lording it over. I need to control this genius rather than seeing it as what it is, which is a download of her brain. It's the common sense part of her brain.
That's my point.
And so she's got
Exactly.
a inner conflict going on externally.
Mhm.
you know so it's like
Yeah,
that's what's playing out there.
there was.
And I didn't see that until y'all
Mhm.
both said these things. But Marcy, I wanted to ask you, because I remember on Wakanda Forever you were pro Riri when
I
Dana
was.
was not pro Riri. She was like, women in STEM, you know?
So
So,
here's my
so tell
so
me, what is there an evolution of thinking now that we see more of her? What's going on in your
I
mind?
so I'm still pro Riri in the long run. I
Okay,
am anti Riri's behavior in this
series.
period
Yeah.
of time.
Yes.
Clearly something has happened. I don't know what the slant was, and it was really unclear as to what happened between the time of coming back from Wakanda and whatever. I would have imagined that she would have come back differently. I don't. It's hard to tell the time frame around when she lost her father and Natalie. It's hard. I couldn't exactly tell if that was before she got swooped up or right after, but clearly that has had some sort of impact.
Yeah.
So she is not the same Riri. Clearly something has happened because her whole demeanor
Between.
from the
Yeah.
beginning of that to now, and I think that's I don't. It's a spoiler, and now I'm struggling with how to say it.
We already said spoiler alert.
So there's a part at the end when she's in the diner with the dude,
Yes. The dude.
and he
Hmm.
says, "Through no fault of your own," and I disagree. There
Yes.
were a lot of things that were consequences of actions and behaviors that she was exhibiting that led to some of those things. Some of them were not malicious, but they were through fault of her own. She did blow stuff up. She didn't mean to, and it wasn't malicious, but it was expensive, and there was a reason she got kicked out of MIT.
Hmm.
But the reason, the minute she started to think that also, and that is part of what bothered me, was there was a lack of personal accountability almost all the way through, from getting kicked out of MIT to being to losing the first suit, to her decisions about how to get a second suit, to incinerating cousin John, to leaving the piece and not telling him that the piece had been left and letting him get arrested, to him telling her you are your own worst enemy and her not listening. All the way through, it is not through no fault of her own. It is through a series of choices that she has consistently made, while also not taking accountability and not listening to her conscience or Natalie or her mama or the little boy on the street, or come on now. And I think that the minute she sat down at that table and he said through no fault of her own, your own, and I looked at her face, I was like, she gonna fall, because why would you not? Because this is somebody else who is saying this is not your fault. This is not, you don't have, this isn't because of you. When in retrospective, it's all because of her. And I think that's the part that I got frustrated by. And I say that's somebody who struggles, and it looks at me like, me, I'm the problem. Hey, there's a song about it. Hey, it's me. I am the problem. It is me. Nobody, that song never played. She never had a moment where she said, the reason
They
we
couldn't
are
afford that
here,
song for this. No, I'm
probably
kidding.
not. The reason I am here
Yeah.
is because of the choices I have made up until this point, and that's the thing that I got frustrated by.
Yeah.
And the minute he said that, and it panned over to her face, I was like, that's the whole problem all the way through. Is in this one conversation. This is the thing that's frustrated me throughout this entire series. Is that there wasn't a whole lot of personal accountability for the choices that she made to get what she wanted,
Hmm.
because in each of those places there was at least one counter opinion being brought to the table that said you could have done this differently, and that no one of those, no matter how bad it was, no matter how horrible the situation ended up, it didn't change anything about her perspective or her choices in the next round. I was like, come on now. Even every scientist by now would have done some sort of iterative deductive reasoning and said, I got to change something because the outcome keeps looking pretty similar.
Right.
And nowhere did I see that, and that was the part that frustrated me.
Yeah. The scientific method was not in play.
Not at all. You could be a genius, but also I had to remind myself she's a kid. She was still very young, and she was, to Stacey's point, trying to do it on her own and trying to prove something to herself, to the world, to whoever. And I kept trying to have to ground myself in that part of it as well to try to get past it. So when I say anti Riri, and it's not that I, it's not that I don't like her as a character in general. It's just that I was very frustrated by her choices in this one. And again, it doesn't mean I didn't like the show. It just means that when I looked at all of the characters and the way that a lot of the situations, her friend got turned into a robot. and
Friend got turned into a robot.
Oh,
yeah.
Joe slash Ezekiel.
Yes.
And when he said to her, I spent my whole life, and even then he showed her grace, I spent my whole life trying not to turn into this man, trying not to turn into my father. And it was you who made me turn. And now look at where I'm at. But still, I'm not going to kill you. But you should probably. And did she leave? Did she do anything? No. She still had to come and try to prove and try to get the thing and try to. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, even then. And he said to her, I spent my life. And this is after he had told her that truth as Joe. And said, I don't want this life. She got him embroiled in his whole life. And then when he came to her, and so when he said to her rightfully, I just need you to know you and I are not done. I was like, good, because somebody has to let some consequences happen here, because clearly everybody's like, oh, it's just her grief. No, it's not just her grief. This is not just grief. And that's why when she was sitting at that table, he knew it too. Thank you. Keep going.
Well, about Ezekiel, we are not comic book people, but in the comics, yeah, it's manifest destiny. He was going to be a robot anyway. Well, robot. He's iron.
I mean, I see that, but in this,
but it's a totally different way that happens, and I agree. She's the reason here, where she's not the reason in the comics, but it's a totally different thing. But it's so interesting to hear y'all's perspective on Riri, because I think I had a little bit of both perspectives, I'm going to say. And I think part of it is because I kind of remember when I was 19, which is what she's supposed to be 19 in this. I kind of remember when I was 19, I did pretty much some of the worst stuff that I've done my whole life when I was 19 and did not listen to anybody else for most of it, until consequences came to a head where it's like, okay, I have got to do the right thing here. So it was frustrating to see her make those choices and not pay attention to what other people were saying. And so I felt that in the beginning when she's making those choices, and then I have to take a little bit of that back, because I'm like, she's also this hot-headed 19-year-old with a genius complex, but not just with a genius complex. She's an actual genius, so she's got a little bit of narcissism going on there, a little bit. So I get both sides of it, and then the other part of it is too, like what Staci was saying about the grief part of it, and how we see her move through grief, and how that's different and also brings depth to her character. Not just depth to her character, but it brings depth to the story. So it's not just how this girl became the next Iron Man. It's the whole journey to that, and why she wants to even do the suit in the first place. And she keeps saying, because I can. But we know, and I think is it episode 5 where she's talking to her mother and she says, I want to protect you, where her mother is in the bubble.
That
was that 5 or 4?
I think that was 4.
4, okay.
Yeah.
5 is where the other people are in the bubble, which I want to talk about them too. But yes, when she's in the bubble and she really tells the reason why, is I want to protect you. And I think her grief in her grief and in losing
Mhm.
the people that she's lost, the protectors of everything, she feels like because she's smart enough that she can protect everybody. So she's got that vibe going on, blinding her. So
Okay. Mhm.
I feel like she's she's a very complex character that I really liked watching. I'm not gonna lie, but she's
Mhm.
also frustrating to watch,
Mhm.
which is also why she is susceptible to the surprise guest at the end, which we will
Mhm.
spoil because it's already been spoiled on the internet, and we already said spoiler alert. But right now, I think that's why she is susceptible. She is susceptible, and that is why he can
Mhm.
manipulate her with what you said, Marcie. That is
Mhm.
no fault of her own. He can really trigger that because he
Mhm.
knows she's going to,
Yeah.
she doesn't even see that she's making bad choices. She doesn't even see
Right.
that. She
Right.
doesn't see it at all. She's making bad choices.
Yeah.
And I think too that she thinks that she's making good choices because she's trying to see something else. She's seeing through grief. She's seeing what she wants to see in the end, which is I want to get this iron suit, right? So I'm going to
Mhm.
go and do this and do that, right? And there's not necessarily any major consequences for her. It's always happening to other people. Y'all see that?
That's what I'm
Like her,
saying. And maybe
just
and
what
maybe
you
that is the
said.
disconnect. Maybe that's the disconnect is that she doesn't recognize the impact to other people
Exactly.
in
But
the
how
same
Not
way
many
that I
necessarily.
could looking
characters
at it.
actually do? I mean,
That's what I'm saying. I could see it looking at all of them, but because she's singular in her in yeah. I mean, I get that point too. Yeah.
And
I mean,
then
because in
too, she thinks.
WandaVision, she
Go ahead.
she made hostage of a whole town. She didn't feel any kind of. I mean, afterwards, we can talk about like how does she, about the effects of the people around her. A whole town
Hmm.
was under her spell. We didn't kind of go into detail on how that is. We just talk about like what happened later and what kind of PTSD those people had. That I was living a life that I never knew before, and I and realized they were living it because they remembered that stuff once they were out of it. Or we talk about Tony Stark. He sold arms for years. It wasn't just, oh, I just started doing this right after my dad died. He was old when he became Iron
Hmm.
Man. He was not a
Mhm.
young, so he basically sold arms to around the world to kill people. When they had that whole thing with Ultron and the whole city lifted up, how many people died when that city, when they did
Hmm.
all of that? It's
Exactly.
so
All
it's
of
not the
that.
first time characters
No,
like
it's not.
that.
No, no,
So
it's
here's another
totally
thing,
not.
and
It's
and
totally
I'll
not.
say I'll say this, and you guys have not seen Thunderbolts, so maybe that's a difference of opinion too. Because in Thunderbolts, there's a lot of introspection about that, and
Yes.
so that also is part of it as well. Because in Thunderbolts, they start thinking about those things, and
Okay.
the things that they've done in the name of whatever cause they were for, right? But even then, because I was looking at just Ironheart, I feel my feedback still stands. She was making bad decisions, and some of them she could see because her mother said to her when she took that thing to that shop, "You could at least told me, so I could have told them the real before we walked in these people's shop with black magic.
Mhm.
Like you could have told me that." So it's not that she's not aware of the consequences. She lived them, and people have said to her, "You could have done this different." So again, nope, she knew.
So with and actually, Stacy, you bring up a good point, and Marcie, you bring up a good counterpoint. So we are talking about Riri in the sense of Ironheart and her choices, and I agree that her choices are not good. But B, I want to point out, Stacy, what you were saying because it's also a lot of the negative social media feedback that had been going on about Riri. That she is a criminal. She's hanging out with these criminal elements. She's selling stuff. She's doing this, black market kind of deals or whatever so she can get money for her suit. she, is, arrogant and not thinking about the consequences of her actions, XYZ, and saying that in a negative way, whereas Tony Stark did the exact same thing on a whole big scale, just like Marcie is saying, did the exact same thing. The whole reason why he ended up in the cave to make the suit is because he gets captured by these people who he sold. They're actually sitting there with his weapons.
That's true.
He's making the iron suit out of his own weapons that he sold these people that they done captured him with, right? So, and that she does all these other various and sundry things, but we have seen this. You are right. We have seen this, and we have seen people do this thing already. I mean, Ant-Man is an actual criminal, y'all.
He was in jail.
He was in jail. He was in jail. And not only was he in jail, after he got out of jail, he went and stole the suit that he was Ant-Man with. Now granted, Pym wanted him to do that, because he wanted him to be Ant-Man. He wanted him to be the successor. But the dude is a criminal. Not only is he a criminal, he got his criminal folks together after he couldn't hack it at the ice cream shop or wherever he was. He got his criminal gang together so they could do some criminal stuff, right? At least Riri didn't get the gang together. The gang was already getting together. And the thing is, both of these points are valid in this argument. Both points that you have are valid in this argument. Riri's making some bad choices here in Ironheart. If we look at her if we look at this series as that, she's making some bad choices, which I think is what propels the whole. That's what propels the whole show. But at the same time, it frustrates the heck out of us who know better.
Exactly. And I think to me, that is one of the pros of the Marvel universe, is that you don't have to like every superhero to be invested in the story or the outcome, right? So I didn't have to like her all the time to be invested in the story, and I could lean into some of the secondary characters and be like, oh, but I'm still here, but I'm still rooting for it because of, robotic Ezekiel or the girl in the magic shop or whatever. So I think that's the wonder of Marvel, is that there is someone for everyone who's watching. And so I was frustrated with her, but it's not the thing that's going to make me pan the series, right? It's just a thing that when you ask me about characters and character development, it's gonna be the one where she wasn't necessarily the one that I was championing in the story at that point. But I think that's the wonder of Marvel, is that there's someone for all of us. I mean, if you look at X-Men, there's the same dynamic. Like if you look at any that. But I think that's the beauty of it, is that we can all find something or someone that resonates with us.
We will continue this discussion on our next episode. Make sure you're subscribed to Nerdy Romantics Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and visit nerdyromanticspodcast.com to subscribe to our newsletter, where you can get show notes directly in your inbox. Thank you for listening.